Welcome back to day 98 of our chess journey to 1500 ELO on chess.com. Let's just jump on ahead here and find an opponent. So we get Francisco 521 from Argentina today. Let's play 1d4. What does our opponent do? We get the old Benoni defense, which honestly I do not quite know how to play against. Something tells me I'd like to try out taking the pawn. Now we get this, which is kind of a funny mirrored Queen's Gambit accepted, where we are accepting the Gambit. I think it might be interesting here trying to hold on to the pawn as white and playing b4. The knight comes out, but do we have c3 now? I think we do. a3 might be a move as well. This might even be an interesting move. But then it might be a bit difficult to defend this c-pawn afterwards, so I don't think I'd like to go for that idea. So it's either this or this, in which case I think I prefer pawn to c3, or do I? There is this kind of an idea. Yeah, let's come here and see what our opponent does. I think normal development is probably okay for our opponent here. Yeah, they go for it. Quite normal stuff, playing like a Queen's Gambit, but as black. This doesn't quite work because of this, I think. I was looking at this line here, but it doesn't quite convince me. It doesn't seem bad per se, it's just, it doesn't look fantastic either, or does it? Let me just have a quick look here. Can we get at this pawn? Not necessarily. Oh, there's my phone. I hope you didn't hear that all too loudly. Do we have this here? Yeah, I'm realizing now this diagonal here might be difficult for our opponent to fight, or to contest rather, so I'd like to go for this kind of a setup, although this might be good as well. My intuition here is this move might be best, followed by something like this maybe, but I'd like to try this out and see what we can get done with our light squared bishop. We will still have a look, I think, at something like this after the game here and try to check which move is preferred by the engine. Here I think we take, most likely. This is likely to be played. If queen takes, then I think we take, and I think we just play up a pawn. The queen takes. I think this seems to force our hands. We will see this, this, and likely castles. Now this pawn is defended for now. We have this as well, kind of bullying the knight. First of all, I'd like to come out here, maybe threatening to take, and decimating the pawn structure. although I don't quite know whether that's great for us or not. If we get this, well, on the one hand here, we're not quite fully developed here. I'd like to get something like this going to get our pawns like this, but as I mentioned, we need development. This doesn't quite work here in regards to taking the pawn. Don't want to play this yet because it blocks out our bishop. Do we have this move? Then can the knight move into a good position? This is controlled by our bishop. So I think if we play this and this is played, this followed by this, and our opponent's pawns are just decimated. And then I think maybe this and knight here. At least that's what I'm looking at. We don't have a lot of forwards moves from this. We can't come like, oh, no. Ooh, almost pre-moved. Now this, as I mentioned, and now I think we have to make a decision here, because this and this can be forced by us, in which case our opponent's pawns here will be quite bad. But is it worth giving up the bishop here? Let's try to evaluate the following position here. What's our next move? Because this is quite committal, so I want to have an extra look at it. I think our next move here is probably going to be this. So we can castle our king perhaps. Then our opponent, they won't take our knight. It's a bit difficult to develop this knight. We might have to go here. Most likely, I think, our opponent would like to get the rooks into the game here. We're up a pawn. I say, why not go for it? I don't see how this can be bad, at least. This is perhaps a slight weakness in some lines, but not necessarily. Our pawn majority here is on the queen side. Let's first get our knight out. Look to castle perhaps. I don't want to play this because we're not quite ready, I think, for centralizing our king. An important thing here I did think of is, I didn't think of this. But what I did think of is this file can't be utilized because of our pawn structure, so this is not really much of a threat. Now what is our move here then? I kind of want to play this to allow us to play this, but that might be a bit slow. Maybe here. I think this looks good. If we go here and our opponent comes in here, then we just move the rook. This looks good for us, so I think if we get this and our opponent comes back, well, then we can't castle, but we have this move, which is annoying. The bishop has to come back to defend the pawn. And here I think we're in an okay spot, actually. Here we might be able to play this, perhaps. Not quite sure, but we'll have a look. Anyways, I think this looks okay. Is what I'm trying to argue for here, at least. It's an annoying move here if bishop to g2 is played, but losing castling rights here is not the end of the world. This still, and this seems to win a pawn here, because if this is played, we just take this and we take. If it's defended, we just take, probably. I don't see a more natural move, at least, than playing this. Our opponent, once again, another opponent above 15 minutes at 14 moves. Well, I would advocate for using more time, but haven't really spent a lot of time this game either, to be honest, so I can't quite blame our opponent this game because of my own time expenditure here, or usage. The reason this is not ideal here is because this knight could get somewhat eternally pinned, and here it actually blunders because this knight is not defended if this is played. So we'll have to be cautious of this. If this looks like a free pawn. Alternatively, b5, and this looks like a decent position. We have eternal pressure here, I think, on this pawn. If we get this, if we go here, and this is played, I still think we go here. This pawn has to be protected, and I think we just have ways of jumping in and being annoying here. Still, this is not ideal, but we'll see what we can do about it as time goes on here. We either take the free pawn, disallowing the bishop here from being on the board, but then this pawn becomes difficult to defend and things will fall to the rooks. Instead, let's push. If this is played, we go here. We do not go here because, or rather, if this is played, we can't go here because takes, and we just lose the game like this. Now this is, as I mentioned, is ideal for us, most likely this, and if this is played, we can come back to defend. Or we could defend like this. And honestly, now a4 might still be a move, or might have become a move, but this is best, I think, to prevent this and to prevent this. Let's push and see what our opponent does. Our main issue here still lies with this bishop. Honestly, I might want to invite this kind of tempo to our opponent to get some activity. Now, what is our ideal response to this? Let's just have a quick look. This loses the knight, so that's out of the question. Is this a move? What's the difference between this and this? If If we go here, we can jump in here perhaps, which seems okay. If we go here, we don't have a lot of jumps, maybe here, but that's not necessarily great. And going here keeps this square open for our other knight, if needs be. Now this pawn here is hanging, so I'm curious to see what our opponent does. I think our opponent here is getting a lot of weaknesses, which is great for us. 6 pawns and not a single pawn is defended by another pawn. Well, now it is, but is this just overextending perhaps, or is it not? Can we come up here? If we're targeted, maybe here and just hitting the stuff. Don't want to come back, seems a bit too passive. This, and we lose the knight here as well, so we can't go here, can't go here. This seems passive. This seems active. Let's come up here. This is probably our ideal position. Importantly, taking the 8 away from our opponent, so it's difficult to use the only open file here, which would be great. Now, is this a blunder or not? Because probably this doesn't work. And I mean a blunder by us, or by me, or whatever you say there. We can't. This takes, and that's a check even. I looked at this, but what happens here, not anything good for us at least. So this might be a decisive blunder, might have played a bit too quickly. But let's see if we can salvage this. Moving the knight is probably out of the question because, well, the knights can't defend each other. This is met with this. And then this looks bad. Yeah, so this might be incredibly bad. It seems nothing works out tactically here. Might just have to accept losing a knight, which is definitely not ideal. Still, this doesn't work because this is a check and we lose more material. So maybe here coming back was better. But this is our position now. Let's see what we can do about it. Still, we have this play on the queen side perhaps. Can't quite go here because we can get taken, and if we move the other knight, this still hangs. So this diagonal here looks horrendously bad for us. Can't hit this bishop with any jumps. So what do we do here? Maybe this is best. Really sucks having this kind of a blunder here because the position was quite great, or really good rather, but yeah, we can't go here either in any positions. First of all, this can be taken, but we can get pinned as well, which is not ideal. I think we just have to accept we lost a full knight and go on from here. I think here maybe. But then takes, and we have to move, and then this outpost is taken, but then we move here and we can maybe win this pawn and play with the pawn majority. I think this might be our best chance of counterplay, so let's go for it. Still, moving this knight is not ideal. Yeah, we do get this. Might have to come here. This or this might be played. This is a move as well. This bishop here is still doing a lot of work. E3 has to be played at some point, or we're going to be in a bad spot. Would like to take a bishop here at some point because the bishop here is controlling a lot of squares. Ideally, our opponent only has access to one color complex as opposed to two. Now I think this pawn looks ripe for the taking. And if this is played, then we get this. I think we have some play on this side perhaps. Or do we? There might be this move in response rather. Let's calculate. Here. Takes. This and this. If this is played, maybe this, hitting the bishop, giving us time to come here and defend the pawn perhaps. I think this works. Our win condition here is probably, this is a horrible way of getting checkmated. I missed this entirely. Absolutely missed this. No, wow. This is brutal. Our only move is this, and this will be played, or this will be played, and it's lights out. This was an uncharacteristically bad endgame here by me, but that's how it goes at times. We get this, which is just, I think, more accurate. More accurate than the other variation, and here we have essentially nothing. This, and we might just get a windmill here, which might be quite fun to see, but let's still play on for a couple more moves, considering what happened yesterday. We're checked. No, this will get taken, or this. No, honestly, this is quite bad. This is definitely not good. But let's see what we can do. Might still get a checkmate perhaps, considering, or checkmate, I mean a stalemate, considering our opponent's speed. But I don't think that's likely. Oh, still coughing a bit here. But generally speaking, I'm feeling a lot better than I did a couple of days ago. Hit the rook, and maybe look to get hit this perhaps. Still we're down 10 points. And we'll see if we can swindle something, but it's not seeming likely here, especially considering the time situation. Our opponent here calls our bluff and says, well, if we take the rook, then that's bad for us because we have one piece left and our opponent has two. Here I think we can push. I'm expecting this at some point, opening up the bishop to control this c8 square. Our king here is cutting off the rook from joining the action, which is quite ideal right now. Maybe this. Defending the pawn and getting closer. Might have a check here in some positions, but not while we're pinned. So we're down 11 points of material. I don't expect to win here, but we'll play on and see what we can get done with our pawns. Somewhat annoyingly, we can't play b6 here to play this because of this pawn being here. Otherwise, I might have been quite optimistic here. We might have some better chances, but still I think we might perhaps have something if our opponent misplays. Now this is opened up, as I mentioned. An important question is, do we have this? Taking the pawn here. It doesn't look ideal, but we don't have a lot. So let's try to go for something. Now, if our opponent plays anything down here, we might unpin or get the knight out of problems at least, is what I was going to say. To maintain as many pieces as possible here. Just to complicate matters and maybe allow ourselves some chances. Honestly, I think our opponent's best move here is taking the knight. But we get this, and this is not possible. So I guess we have to take the pawn. And still we threaten to take the rook. This looks annoying. We can't quite afford to lose this pawn, but we can't defend it either. Ideally, we would have this, but we don't quite. This connection is cut off, which might be good for us. We can't go here now though. Can't come here. Maybe this. Hitting the rook and maybe preparing to jump like this and pushing forwards. We are checked. I think if we want to win here, our king needs to get to this section of the board. Unless it loses tactically, of course, then that's not ideal. We have one move here, namely this. And now our only way of winning is going to be stalemate. So how do we go about this? Maybe we can't come here or here. Maybe pushing the pawn first. It's taken. We don't quite have an easy stalemate here. I'm not optimistic of our chances, but some of you guys have been mentioning we should try to play on in some of the lost positions, although this might be one of those positions where playing on is not quite necessary. We'll just play quickly though. This will just get pushed now, and then we get a queen as well, making this even easier. Our last ditch resort. If this is not taken and we get this, we might have chances. It is. So here we will resign and say thanks for the game. Well played to our opponent. Let's have a look at the game review. Can you see this? Yeah, you can. Game review is currently not working. So we'll have to have a look at the analysis instead. Apparently d5 is best here. Didn't consider it, should have. Still, this is probably okay. It's a book move. This was good. This was not quite good. Should have went here, hitting the pawn. So if this pawn was taken, we get another pawn back. Didn't see that. Should have maybe played this as well though, but this is not... It doesn't feel natural to me because it blocks our development. Still, we did have a lot of okay moves. We took here. This was okay. Went here, I think. And we went here, which was not the best move. Yeah, this is where we want to come back and ask ourselves, was this good? Bishop to g5. It was it this position? Yeah, it was this position. I mentioned this, but it's not that good. This was maybe a bit better. Here we took, which was not the best move. Honestly, this was not even remotely close to being blessed by the engine. I thought it was going to be better, but apparently it wasn't. Still, we did get a decent position until, well, honestly, I think this game was really good until this point. This was just a savage tactic. Nothing worked, nothing could be defended, didn't have this, and well, it's just difficult to make moves here. Should have jumped in, but if we went here and this was played, honestly I didn't consider castling in this direction, forgot about castling, but still this is not an ideal position, but maybe a bit better, I guess, than what we went for. Here, once again, this looks like a great move. I just forgot this was even an option. If I had remembered, would have definitely played this, because the king here is in a horrible position. The king on c1 does a whole lot more. And, well, there was this as well, which would have not been available if our king had castled to the queen side, which is a funny thing to say considering the pawns and everything, but, well, it is how it is. Did we ever have any chances here? Probably not, no. We're not quite blessed by the evaluation, as I was going to say is to be expected here. Nothing's going to work when we're down this much material, but there might have been some chances. Let's see if the game review works now. Then we can have a quick look at the accuracies, etc. But it seems like it's getting stuck here, so I'll give it a few seconds and maybe a second try. But if it doesn't work, then it doesn't work. Yeah, it seems we're getting no game review today. But we did get a decent idea here from the analysis as well. I do hope you guys could see the evaluations. Yeah, you can. So that's great. Not ideal that the game review doesn't work, but it is how it is. It's good when we have it at least. Anyways, thanks to Francisco521 for the game. Thanks for watching to the end of the video. This has been our game for today, and I hope to see you all tomorrow. Bye bye.